FSC is nothing but Financial Services Cloud, and we'll be just having a walkthrough today on wealth management. Okay, so what is wealth management ideally? So let's take a step or a deep dive into it. So before we begin with wealth management, so wealth management, asset distribution, all of these are part of Financial Services Cloud, right? So now, what are the benefits that we actually get before we get into wealth management? What are the benefits that we get with Financial Services Cloud, right? So, like in Salesforce, it's always a 360-degree view, right? But there's something new here, right? So we have something called as 360-degree household relationship view. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of household. So what's household here? Household is a concept that we use in FSC. Okay, so that belongs to so that's something like a custom object, you can say, which stores all the related members or related accounts in a group, right? So that's household. Apart from that, in FSC, what are the other benefits that we get based on wealth management or any other facet that it provides? That's basically it's built for banking industry, right? So all the data model and the objects that are there are specific to FSC. Okay, then apart from that, it gives us always enhanced security support, right? So the data are like the concept of multi-tenancy that is supported in FSC as well. So the data remain secure for each and individual, and I would say at the household level or the corporate unit level. Okay, then we have automated advisory workflows, so we'll come back to that in the next slides. And then we have something called as reference and compliance tracking. Okay, now why do you think we need wealth management, right? So wealth management is basically a concept, if I put it like for a lame person, for a layman, right? Who doesn't know Salesforce, who doesn't have idea on CRM. So what does wealth management mean? So if I am working, my husband is working, right, and we are earning, right? In that case, how would we save money, or how would we secure our future, ensure that we have enough savings to take care of our family and so on, right? So now that's where CRM is a I would say CRM is one Salesforce I would say software that helps us like a bar between the actual user and the people who are setting up Salesforce. Right now, the Salesforce CRM lacks the traditional ones like Sales Cloud, lacks the intelligence to handle financial dealings, right? So in general, Sales Cloud concept, if you see, all the financial data or any data is always stored outside of Salesforce, not within Salesforce, right? But now, how do I know that, so for example, if I have like 5 accounts and the details are there stored in external system, right? So how would a user or an agent know that for Renuka, I need to fetch those 5 accounts which are stored in the legacy system, right? Without having any security issues, right? So this was lacking in Sales Cloud. That's where our Financial Service Cloud has come into. So the traditional CRMs which lack this relationship management, right, the financial relationship management is handled very well as part of wealth management. Okay, now after that, what does it do? So for handling the accounts, right, or I would say the liabilities, investments, and all those details, to handle that, what do we do? First, we need to enroll or onboard the person onto a system, right? So right now, Salesforce is the onboarding system. Okay, so that's where like we have it at banks as well, right? So we have an onboarding system. So we have a KYC system, right? We fill up the KYC form. That's how the bank knows that it knows about our name, our identity, right? How are we related, and how can we manage the account? So such details are also used in wealth management. Okay, that's what it provides. So what wealth management provides is client onboarding. Then we have advisory management. So advisories are people who actually give us financial guidance, okay, based on whatever services we need. So I would say like I am not aware of what is the current market trend, right? How can I uh, pitch into equity? How can I maybe buy a share and all that, right? So for that we have a concept called as advisory management. Then we have the financial account tracking. and services. This is what I was just speaking about, right? Now, how do you think it benefits the client businesses? It will benefit the client businesses with the faster response, basically, right? So if we are looking for a quick solution on, say, the market is dropping, and it's a good opportunity to invest in something, right? So that when it rises, we'll have the benefit. So that for that we need faster advisor responses, right? Now there are personal recommendations, there are AI recommendations now onwards, right? Then we have better compliance, as in with improved compliance, we can say that we ensure that the uh, customers and the users all are benefited with the uh, I would say the services that are provided as part of wealth management, and how it can be accommodated in case I want to say um, reinvest into something, right? At that point of time, it provides prompt response, and it also provides the guiding steps on how I can do it as well, right? That's how we get better customer rate. Okay. So now let's just go through what are the enhancements in wealth management. So obviously, wealth management, I would say the finance services cloud itself is built on top of sales cloud, right? So what are the enhancements that we find here? One is relationship manager management. So in relationship management, we obviously have the household relationship model. So what does this household relationship model I would say contain, right? So it contains data, like I told you, of related entities, right? Or related, I would say, personas, people, units, etc. So to give you a very simple example, we can think of it as an object which contains the data of a family, right? So it can be containing a data of a family like a husband, wife, and kids, or so on, right? So for that particular entity, we can then try to understand the financial visibility and how it can be I would say uh, so we can understand what is the financial visibility of that family, and how we can save, we can make investments, we can understand what are the liabilities, and against that we can adjust and try to enhance their financial condition, right? So this is one of the examples that I'm talking about. Then now, to help with all these things, right, like we have the investments, we have the deposits, how do we handle all that? So for that we have something called as advisor relationship insights. So advisor is basically the person who has the financial idea, right? Who understands how the market trends are, how it works, and how we can, basically make good use of it for our clients. For example, me, I'm the client, and advisor can be the person who helps me with my financial decisions, right? So now, with wealth management, our advisor also gets insights on how he can help us, right, in our financial planning. Okay, so wealth management, basically the concept itself is how you can manage your wealth, to put it in short. Now, apart from that, we have something called as financial management. Now, in financial management, we have things like how the accounts can be tracked, right? So, I might have an account, my husband has an account, right? But the kids won't have an account. So, how would you place them under, right? If you have like education expense, you have insurance expense, and so on, right? So, how do you accommodate all that? Those will be handled across financial accounts tracking. Then we have something called as holdings and asset management. This is basically what I was talking about. So if you have investments, if you have some deposits and so on, right, and you have liabilities, you have a house, you have a home loan, how do you manage it? That can also be managed easily with wealth management. Similarly, we have policy management support. Now, how are these things achieved in Salesforce? So in Salesforce, it will be obviously achieved with something called as automation and compliance. So how do we automate the journey? So where the very first thing is, how would I interact with my advisor, right? Not necessarily I always get to a call with them, right? I can always go into a chat, I can always send emails, right? Or the advisor will have a task, right? Or a kind of a, I would say, a task to maybe call me and have a follow back on what needs to be done, and so on. So all these interactions that we have can be captured as part of interaction summary. So the minute advisor logs into Salesforce, he can always see the summary of what has been happened so far and what are the decisions that need to be taken, right? After that, we have something called as KYC workflow. So just like I was explaining you, KYC is know your customer, right? So for that workflow, we can have an automation. So we can easily just enroll and even select what are the services we are looking for and so on using wealth management. Now moving ahead, so let's just go through a quick use case. Meanwhile, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop into the chat. Okay. So to just understand the concept of wealth management and how it can be dealt with, we have this use case. Okay. So basically, I've just come up with a family. Like I was just explaining you guys, we have someone called as Pete Jacob. Now he has a wife and two kids. His wife's name is Rosie, and he has two children called Tim and Ryan, right? And now he wants to understand that how can he secure his family's future in as with his long-term goals, right? What he needs to do. So for that, he is looking for a person who can advise him on how to save, how to invest, right? How can he plan for the kids' education and so on, right? So that's where he meets a person called as Sam, who's a financial advisor, right? So this financial advisor is a person who can guide him through how to secure his future, how to do savings, where does he need to invest and so on using FSC. Okay. So now what does he do? So basically, in Sam will use the financial services cloud, right? And there what he'll do is, first of all, he will enroll the family, right? So he'll enroll the Jacob family as a household profile, right? And that in there, what he'll do is he will add all the existing investments, liabilities, right? And all the financial necessary details that he needs to understand, what are the current liabilities that they have, and what are the investments and deposits they have, and what is their goal towards, right? So what do they need? So for example, if they need to plan for a child's future in coming 10 years, they need to ensure that they can save enough for the child's education, right? So how do they do it? So he will add all these details. He'll add the family investments, then he'll track the accounts, right? Based on the insurance policies and the trends, he will then capture the financial goals, and then he will finally suggest, right? So you can go for this, you can go for that, and this can be achieved using FSE and AI insights. Okay. And that's where, after all this is done, so basically the advisor will get a single screen, and right, so that's where the uh, actionable relationship center comes into place, right? So that's called the ARC. So in that, what happens is, the advisor in one screen, right, like a dashboard, he can see all the reports so far. So what has been happening with his account, I mean, are his investments trending? Is it going up? Is it going down? How many investments has he made so far? How many liabilities are there, and all that, right? And based on that, he can guide for long term financial planning. All right. Now, how do you think? So this is all functional and how he's doing it. How do you think, uh, Sam would go ahead and do all this in FSC, right? So let's just go through a quick high level flow on how it actually works. So like I told you, the very first onboarding happens at the lead level, and from the lead, we create a household for them, right? And on the base of household relation, we can have groups, right? So we can have groups of the spouse where they are earning, right? And then based on that, you can have, in that group we can have the members and so on. Okay, so they are called planning group and planning members. Based on the members, for each individual, you can have their respective set of liabilities, investments, deposits and so on. Okay, insurance and so on. Now, once the lead and the client is onboarded, basically, right, we'll ensure that the KYC is done, right, at FSC. And once that all is done, then we link all the financial details, right, of the accounts and the holdings linked to client in against the household itself. So against each planning member. So there's a concept called as planning member, where for each planning member, so where the advisor is planning for these members, they will have all these details. Now within the household, you can have not just family, you can also have the advisor, you can have the attorney, and so on. Okay, so that's where it's called the household, where you have the it's just not restricted to family, it can also contain your attorney or advisor and all those people who can guide you through, right? So they can be like your point of contact. So the advisor and the attorney will be added as a contact against your household, so anything anytime happens, they can always reach out to your, say, the attorney, the lawyer, and all, right? Then we have the advisor. So what does the advisor does? He captures goals into opportunities and investment plans, right? Then after all this is done, we have our service request. So in case you know so in case I say that, I want to uh, end this investment and I want to go in for another one, right? So to end this request, I can raise a service request as a user, right? And based on that, it will be assigned back to the advisor and the agent, right? And all these can be done using flows and omniscripts. I'm sure who those who are experienced here already know what are flows and omniscripts. So flows and omniscripts are basically our automation, I would say, tools and capabilities that is provided in Salesforce, right? To quickly ensure that we have guided journey, or we have, you know, the backend process is done once um, a journey has started, right? Then we have something called as dashboards and reports. This is what I was telling you. So based on the portfolio insights, whatever the advisor sees, that's all he sees in the dashboards against the household, right? So based on that, he can further provide insights